I'm going to show you how to build nice and realistic looking S-shaped railway switches compared to the ugly and unrealistic straight ones. This picture doesn't really show it all that well, but let's take a look at the detail. This is the unrealistic connection. As you can see, it's just a straight railway piece that's just looking really bad. And this is the S-shape curve. And it's super smooth, it's looking really good. And even the railway ties are actually nicely aligned. So how exactly are you going to build this instead of this? So this technique is nothing new. Maybe you already know about it. Maybe you are just using it without realizing it. But in any case, I'm going to show you. So in here, I'm going to be using railways from the Railway 1 collection. It doesn't really matter which ones you use, Railway 1, 2, or others. The important thing is that they are going to be nodeless. It's kind of important to do nodeless tracks for like complicated switches in like big stations or yards or something. So I'm going to be using nodeless. This technique kind of requires nodeless. So right here I have, I'm just going to open Move It. I'm going to show you that I do have like two separate networks in here, the same kinds of tracks, all right? I'm going to take the exact same track that I do have here. And I have now snapping, the vanilla snapping enabled to angle, and road guidelines just so I need to see the nodes. It's important that you connect two nodes. This technique doesn't really work when you are connecting just a track, just a segment, so that you want to have a new node created, all right? It only works when you are connecting two existing nodes. And in the fine road tools, you need to have the snapping, the node snapping enabled, all right? And obviously anarchy needs to be enabled as well for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the start and hover over the end, and that's it. The game is literally going to build the S-curve for me. So this might seem like obvious, but I'm going to talk about the specific, like why is it going to be built like this and why not straight, all right? So in my experience, this is due to the fact that the tracks are fairly close. It doesn't really have anything to do with the angle. As you can see, I'm using precision engineering and it displays 4.3 degrees. It's like a very small letter in here, so maybe you don't see it, or number, but it's 4.3 degrees. And it doesn't really matter because what matters is that the tracks are close. So if I'm going to move the tracks like slightly further apart and then I'm going to try it, then it's not going to work. And even if I make, for example, the nodes further apart so that the angle is pretty much the same. As you can see now I have 5.4 and it's perfectly straight, right? Right here this outline, this blue outline is perfectly straight. But if I'm going to, for example, move it and just move this node like really further away so that the angle is going to be so much lower, I'm just going to wait for the nodes to appear. Yeah, so in here I have 3.6, even lower. But since the tracks are not close to each other, this is again perfectly straight line, all right? So the rule of thumb in here is probably that if you see these like gravel holes, so that the gravel texture is not like bleeding through completely to the other network, you have a problem and you won't be able to do the S-curve, right? So let me just hit Control Z a couple of times to put this back, and I can easily just build this example, all right? So the tracks need to be close to each other, and the snapping needs to be enabled like I showed you, all right? Now, let me show you a real example that I kind of copy-pasted from my train station where I needed to do this, and that's kind of how I discovered this or rediscovered this. Sometimes it's not going to be all that super easy to do it at first, all right? So I have this double track up and on the bottom a single track, and I want to create like a switch between them, all right? So I'm just going to do this, and at the start it's going to do like a straight piece, right? You can easily spot that it's a straight piece because precision engineering is going to show you the values of angles on both ends, right? So what I need to do now is, it's kind of fiddly, and it kind of also depends on like the camera angle or something. You're just going to move the mouse cursor like slightly further away into like a different position, and as you can see, it's alternating between the straight and the S-curve. And when the S-curve is going to be built, it doesn't display that precision engineering angle at the starting node, right? So this is what we want, this is what we don't want, all right? So I'm just going to quickly build this, and yeah, this is a ground segment, doesn't matter. And what I'm going to do here is obviously going to take the node controller. Even the node controller outline is curved like this. You see that, right? It's kind of like a subtle thing. But in here, of course, I would then do the outwards direction, and I would just have a perfect switch between these two tracks, right? Let me just show you the detail. Yeah, there's some glitches. I would like to fix that, but it's just a nice looking S-curve. Now, in some cases, and this is really frustrating if it happens, when you need to move the mouse cursor like outside the node so that the game kind of snaps on its own into the S-curve, you might end up with having actually overlapping nodes at the point where you want to connect. So it happened for me, for example, over here as I was building this. As you can see, if I move this railway slightly further away, it actually moves the switch, but the original point that I wanted to connect to is still there, right? So it created a new node, but obviously you don't want to have this on the railways, otherwise trains are going to go crazy. So the best way to get rid of this is simply take the network multi-tool and delete the node where you don't have the switch. Also make sure that you are always building from the more complicated points, right? So for example, in here on this double track, I have like 4 different switches connecting into it, and obviously if every single one of these created the overlapping node, then I would never connect them ever, right? It would not be possible. So always make sure that you start from these and continue outwards into just the nodes where you have a single switch, because there you can easily delete the overlapping node. Also, you might be thinking that this is caused by the road guidelines snapping, but it's not. I just tested it, built a couple of these switches, and it has absolutely zero effect. Also, with Network Multitool, with the remove node mode, I don't even need to move the nodes away from each other, because I can simply press Control Space, like it says here, to just step over them. And one of them is going to have the green outline, so it's going to be ready for removal. This mode obviously cannot remove intersection nodes, so the switches are absolutely safe. I'm going to show you another practical example. In here, I need to just fill this space. I need to build 3 straight tracks. So no switches, just straight tracks. But there is a difference, because here on one side I have this center as a double track and then a single track on the top. On the opposite side is just completely different, right? I have the double track here, single track here. So I basically need to apply the same technique, although dealing with those like ghost nodes or secondary nodes is going to be slightly something more complicated. So I'm going to start here at the double track, always start at the double track, and then I'm just going to go into the single track. And as you can see, I need to move the mouse cursor quite some distance away from the node in order to build the S-curve, right? And now I cannot use the Network Multitool to delete the secondary overlapped node, because the secondary node is the edge node. It's on the side of the network, and this mode cannot remove that. So what I need to do is I need to use move it, and I need to find, yeah, see that? This is the node that I want to move. I want to find that secondary node, and I want to move it away. So this might be a bit fiddly depending on your shortcuts. You need to use the function in move it, which is called the step over. It's in the settings, the last thing in the shortcuts, right? It's this step over. I have it Control Tab. Maybe you have it something different, right? So what I need to do is, it's best to use the single selection. And as you can see by default, well, right now I already had this one selected by accident, but more often than not, you're just going to have the other one selected. So you would need to step over it and kind of drag it away to make sure that this is the node, and simply just bulldoze it, right? And then I would obviously take node controller again and just do this. So the same thing I would do for the rest of the tracks. So again, I would start here at the secondary, or at the double track, and I would go here, and I would just need to make sure that I can do this. Connecting into the secondary tracks is a bit more fiddly. I talked about the different camera angles, so yeah, there we go. So this is the camera angle, and this is the mouse cursor where it was. As you can see, I really need to move the mouse cursor really far away. There we go. Really far away from this node, and I'm pretty sure that this must have created that secondary node. Actually, this one didn't. Look at that. I'm just moving it around, and there is nothing in there, so I'm just going to press Ctrl Z, put it back, and that's it. Now, in this particular case, I need to use move it, or sorry, node controller on both ends. Need to move it 2 meters on this side and 2 meters on this side. Okay, this last connection is actually more difficult than I thought, but it's just another opportunity to show you something that you can try here. So as you can see, it just doesn't want to snap into the S-curve, right? It always just tries to snap into different nodes or whatever. That is because the game actually likes to create the S-curves when you are connecting the switch into a straight track, continuous track, and not really these kinds of like ends, right? So what you can do is you can simply build like a straight piece like this. You want to build it like this so that it's not going to delete that curve or that node that you just built. Then you're just going to move it by holding Alt, kind of prolong it like this, and now you're going to go back and build your S-curve. And look at that, it finally wants to snap. So I would just do it like that way. Now I have a straight piece in here, so I can actually use the network multi-tool, step over and see if I maybe have a secondary node. And yeah, there it is, green outline. So nice opportunity to show you that that's how you can do it. And as you can see, just double checking it with moving it around, and there's absolutely nothing wrong there. So I'm just going to delete that helping track, and obviously with the node controller 2 meters shift to the side, and look at this. No one could even guess that there is something going on in here, non-standard, because it's just completely straight. And by the way, just to show you how this would look if you didn't build it as the S-curve, all right? So if you did it like this, if you just built it straight, and then I would use the node controller to just shift it to the side so that, well, basically the same thing that I did before, then look at this. This is absolutely disgusting, right? Now, a couple of things. So for example, if you're going to try to copy this with Move It, it's going to break, all right? Actually, this is not like a complete example. Let me just copy it with those connected tracks. So if you're just going to copy paste it, not even going to touch it in any way, it's going to be broken, right? It's going to just revert to that straight direction. Actually, if you are even going to just touch this segment with Move It by holding Alt, for example, and just kind of move it around a bit, it's also going to break. It can be reverted back if you just hold or press Ctrl Z, right? As you can see, it changed back, but you cannot make an S-curve out of the straight connection after it's already built. You actually need to build it as an S-curve, right? Now also, if you are using node controller, then node controller values are exactly the same for both of these segments, right? They are exactly the same, so there is no difference, and you cannot really use node controller to achieve the S-curve, right? I mean, you could probably if you really fiddled with it, but the point is that you actually need to build it right from the start like this, and then kind of build it and forget about it, especially when it comes to Move It, all right?